Hi, Mercy Bickell. Thank you for being here. Welcome back from Japan.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of
And thank you
course.
for helping me test in
No, of
Japan.
course. I mean, that was so. To pull back the curtain a bit, Metal Fab Tokens has more of a looser definition of practice than maybe some other teams do. So that was really great for me to even just 2 hours of testing with Ascent. Like, whoa, people can watch over my shoulder and dictate lines. That's really cool. Now,
Yeah, and,
you're a real
and to provide
professional.
a little bit more context here, on the morning of top eight, I woke up at 4 a.m. Japan time, couldn't go back to sleep. I kept thinking about this Count Your Blessings new matchup that I was full if I got past the Enigma, I was not gonna lie, kind of expecting Michael Hamilton to make it past quarters, and I thought he would be my opponent. So, I hopped online. And I was like, I really need to test this. I don't have a good game plan here. And John helped me out by piloting Aurora and kind of letting me not fully turn my brain on, but just kind of watch how different game plans would go, and that was super great. Yeah.
It was fun to do it. It was fun to pilot the deck. Not an easy matchup, and I was happy and surprised to see you not have to play into it. I'm like, okay, good. So then
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
I
know.
think I think it would have been even scarier than Dio. Although at the time, I was originally I thought I'd rather see the New than the Dio, but works out when your opponent's deck just bricks on them.
Yeah, that
So.
was. I've played enough into Dio to watch that game and see. I forget which turn it was, but as soon as Sam committed to blocking with reds, I thought, oh, the game is ended.
Yeah, he had a really, really rough start. And, I could kind of see, I was like, okay, he pitched a Cerebellum turn one, then he pitched another Cerebellum the next turn. I was like, okay, that's two Cerebellums on the bottom of his deck. And
Yeah.
boost away high octane, boost away a pulse wave, just the cards that I'm scared of.
Yeah.
So it just kind of snowballed in my favor.
Yeah.
I also hit some just very strong turns, higher than average for Aurora, so that helped me really put on the pressure there. But yeah, unfortunate for Sam.
At one point, you played a Burn Up, and that's a card that really, you look at it, it's 0 for 5. Hey, that's a good card. Of course, Aurora's playing it. But for whatever reason, on either end of the matchup, if you just play hey, it's 0 for 5, it's Static Shock. You think, all right, yeah, I'll take 5 damage. But for whatever reason, the Burn Up is such a visceral reaction. It's so no, you could stop it.
Yep.
I'm not hitting you. You're hitting you if you take the Burn Up.
Yeah, it's a really interesting value proposition. I mean, it's kind of similar to Boom Grenade, right? It's kind of okay. I mean, you've just played you've played a 0 for 5 or whatever. But I think particularly on turn 0, it's also very interesting. I ended up playing a Burn Up into a Snatch for 7, and hoping okay, he either doesn't have cards to block this, he could just have items in his hand, or if he can block it, I'm making him give me all his blocking cards, and he can just he can just draw into more items, and I'd be happy with that. So I was pretty happy when he blocked that out. Yeah, not to get too much into the Sam game, but it was. Yeah, it was unfortunate for him, but I think I put the pressure on early that let me kind of just keep going. And when he finally did draw that hand with high octane, he just couldn't keep it.
No, but it showed, to get us further into, away from a specific game and more into general your experience in Osaka. It showed a real thoughtfulness and mastery of Aurora that, from what I've heard from you and on, in person on Blue Sky, just didn't exist 3 days prior to that game. So we can talk about that now or a little bit later. I do want to hear about your, how you got into Fab. How did you get to Osaka over the last months and years?
Well, okay, also to give a little bit more context on the deck, I think some people have taken it to mean I didn't pick up Aurora period until the day before Osaka. That is not true. I 2 weeks before Osaka, I was I was asking Brian, my longtime partner, and he's also an amazing Flesh and Blood player. He also top 64 worlds this year and has had many other amazing accomplishments in the past. But so I was asking him, I don't know what to play. What should I play? Because he's on Enigma. I don't want to learn Enigma. And he was like, I think you should either play Aurora, Viserai, or I forgot what the last one was, or I guess maybe new, because I've also played new in the past. But and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll try Aurora, like aggro deck. This should be fun. Like I liked Fi when Fi was good. So, and I loved Lexi. So I just sort of I grabbed a list off of a PQ winner, which turned out to be the Stroops list, and I brought it to an armory. It felt fine. I think there were a lot of hands I would draw, and I would just feel like, I have no idea what to do with this hand. Like, this hand feels really clunky. And I think that's kind of like the really interesting thing about Aurora is, like, the more you play her, the more you start to see, like, this actually isn't clunky. Like, this is okay. Like, this is gonna set me up well for next turn, like, etc. And I think if you're not, like, if you don't power through that, you can just sort of pick her up and draw the cards and be like, this deck is horrible. Sometimes, and other times you draw it and you're like, oh my god, this deck is, like, insane. How is this legal? So anyway, just to say that, like, I played it in an armory. I was like, this feels really good. But I don't know if this is still the list. Like, it's been weeks since this, list came out. So then I looked at Yuki Lee Bender's public Patreon list, just to kind of, like, get an idea of where that was at. And it was, like, pretty different. She was running blue blinks, blue electrifies, face purgatory was a really big difference. And so I tried that deck out for a little bit, just, like, testing with Brian and some other people, and I was like, this feels horrible. This just feels 10 times worse than, like, the other older list. So, I talked to Ellie and Yuki about it, and they were like, oh yeah, like, don't play that list. Like, go back to the other one. And so that's what I did, and I was like, okay, like, I'm glad my intuition was correct here. Like, this feels better. And then the bulk of, like, my learnings and getting used to the, like, lines on the deck and not missing my windows and getting used to, like, when Gone in a Flash triggers and when electromagnetic somersault triggers, all of that, like, what's the day before Worlds. But, like, yeah, fundamentally, to go back to what you were asking earlier about my, like, just path and my fundamentals, like, I have been playing the game for over 2 years competitively at this point, and been playing since before that non-competitively. And so it was one of those things where I felt like I was really only able to do that because of the experience that I have, and I've really made an effort to try to, like, branch out on decks and not be stuck in one kind of archetype of deck. And I think that's really helped me because it matters so much when you're facing those heroes too, to understand what they're trying to do to you and how they're going to disrupt you, and what's the best thing you can do to play around that. I don't know if that answered your question completely, but it was definitely a really fun experience to kind of pick up the deck last minute and roll with it.
No, that does answer my question. That's a great answer too. When I first became aware of you, I think it was calling Las Vegas. And I top 32 that calling and felt great about it, and then I saw your name, and I thought, oh, you're in the NorCal Discord, I know you. Okay, and then every time I would see your name after that, it was just some new accomplishment. I mean, obviously, second place at Worlds is probably your crowning achievement so far, but you've certainly not slouched before that. I mean, you just have your Fab resume is very extensive.
I mean, I'd say like, it's definitely good. I think it was something where, I felt like I really needed to break it into these, like, top 16s, top 8s to, like, kind of get more recognition. I remember that calling, though. It was like, I felt really accomplished at that calling. Lexi was legal, and I loved Lexi, and I felt really good on Lexi. She just really clicked with me, and I 4 CC at Nats, and then I 0-3'd at the Monarch draft because I could only draft Prism. And then I dropped, and I was like, screw this. Like, I hate Monarch draft. I'm not playing day 2. And then I ended up top 32 in the calling. I think exactly 32. And if I recall, I think you were like 31 or 30.
It was 30.
So we were both just at the cusp there.
Lucky us. Barely squeaked in.
Yeah, but that was a really good time. And then, I guess before that too, this year at at Pro Tour LA, I played Kasai and ended up top 32ing that Pro Tour. And that was like, at the time I was like, holy crap, like I didn't know I could ever like do this well, like this is awesome. I felt so good. It was the first PTI I ever earned, and it was the PTI that I cashed in to play Worlds. So like, it's been one of those things where like I feel like I've sort of been hitting a wall for a long time of like, okay, like I'm still getting used to the game, like I'm still getting used to all the heroes and trying to like wrap my head around you know, what tempo means, what value means, everything that like you need to understand and play the game. And I feel like just recently it's sort of started clicking a lot more, and like once I find that deck that I really click with, it just like things kind of start working out for me in tournaments. And I hope it will continue to work out. Like there is a huge amount of luck that goes into any, you know, winning run at a tournament. Like you have to acknowledge that there were, you know, 400 amazing players at that tournament. Like some of them just hit some really bad breaks, and some of them were friends on the exact same deck who I know can play it just as well as I can, if not better. So so luck went my way this time, and I think I capitalized on that. But yeah, it's certainly been something that like I've been hoping for a long time.
So sort of to speak to that, of you felt like you'd hit a wall. Did that, you know, you top 2 Worlds, you go to Blue Sky, you post an amazing series of posts. They aren't tweets. That's what I haven't figured out about Blue Sky yet, is what do we call them? But you post, you know, amazing series of posts about your performance and how it made you feel, and how for anyone else who's feels like they've hit a wall, don't quit, just keep pushing. And you had mentioned that you had briefly considered quitting Fab. And did that have anything to do with you had hit a wall and you felt like maybe this isn't the game for me? Was it something else?
Yeah, I think I just got really tired of like grinding and feeling like I couldn't put up the results that I wanted to put up. Especially when this is something I've talked about quite a bit with Ellie Bird as well, because you're kind of in a unique situation when you're in a relationship with someone who plays competitive Fab and they're really good at it. So you know, when I started playing competitively, Brian had already top 8'd a US Nats, right? Like I had a lot to kind of like live up to in our household, like if I wanted to play and wanted to like be a good testing partner for him. And you know, Brian's always been my biggest supporter, but it's kind of like this thing where you feel like you're living in their shadow. Because like, you know, we'd be together at events, we'd be walking around, and like it would just happen over and over that people would walk up to talk to him and completely ignore me. And that's not a great feeling when you're like, you know, when you're not as entrenched in the community. And like it took me time to like make my own friends that way, and like it will happen to Brian as much as it happens to me now. You know, even before my Worlds run, and that you know, I think it's just a matter of like Fab players are kind of awkward, and this is a pet peeve I have. People don't introduce each other when you like have friend groups that come together, right? They just want to like say hi, say a quick thing, and then leave. And that's okay, but it's really discouraging when you're like already like a woman in a room full of mostly men, like and you're like, I feel really different here, and like, you know, my last opponent said like 5 microaggressions to me or whatever, and I, you know, and I'm sure he means well, but like I already am feeling that way of like, I'm different, like I don't belong here. And then, you know, to sort of be ignored in that way, and then not given respect, like that sort of thing, it's just very discouraging. And I think it got better when I joined Team Ascent as well. Like I felt very like validated, and I felt like I had this great testing community around me, and they are great. Like I love Team Ascent, they're full of amazing people. But I just, I hit this point of just like, I'm so tired of like playing and like not feeling like I click with a deck, I think was the biggest thing, because I kind of, you know, after the great book burning and, you know, after Zen and everything, I just didn't really have a deck that I loved. You know, I played new at Nats and the calling there, and like I liked new quite a bit, but I'm a player who likes to think a lot about every decision, and that can make my gameplay a little bit slow, and you can't really afford to do that with new.
Yeah.
So I was finding myself in a position of just forcing myself to take game actions, and then later, like, you know, being frustrated that, like, that was not the correct game action, or, you know, playing as fast as I possibly could and still ending up in a draw, you know, just because new mirrors are brutal sometimes. So I just didn't really click with new in the way that I've clicked with Aurora, and I think, like, for me, it is very much about finding that deck that you click with and that you really enjoy playing. And I don't know why I never tried Zen. I think Zen probably would have been that deck for me in that meta, but I really wanted to not just, you know, I feel like I've been kind of typecast as the aggro player before, and I didn't want to just stay in that lane. I wanted to try other things so that I could better understand, you know, from the other side of the table, like, what's happening, even if I did go back to aggro.
Zen always struck me sort of the same way that Starvo did, where he was so obviously busted right out of the gate. I don't want to say right out of the gate for Zen. I think it took a couple weeks until Pudding comes out and says, hey, what if we just played Bonds of Ancestry? But once that was cracked, he was just so obviously strong that you have your Prism players that are diehard Prism fans. Lexi players are diehard Lexi fans. We have some 5 players that just will not play another hero. And I don't feel like that exists for Zen or Starvo, where it's like, no, this is a means to an end. I don't relate to this hero in any way. He's just very good. Yeah.
I think that's a very valid point. I think I definitely didn't feel that, like, sort of draw to Zen. And maybe part of it was, like, no one on Team of Zen kind of, like, thought about Zen before Nats, to be honest. Like, we were kind of like, yeah, he'll be good, but, like, he won't be that good. And then we, you know, we were very wrong about that. But
I think a lot of people
it was, it is certainly a means to an end. I think now, and seeing some of the ways that people are playing Zen now, he could be a lot more, I think when he feels fair to play against, people are less likely to hate him, and more likely to be like, I could identify with this hero and like, enjoy this more, like, mid-rangey style of Zen. But yeah, he definitely had that problem kind of right out of the gate of, like, way too strong and, like, too easy to hate. I actually never experienced the Starvo meta. He was LL before I started playing that, but I've heard many a horror story. Yeah,
I was lucky to come in Uprising, so Starvo was already gone, or at least he was on his way out, and I wasn't super entrenched in CC right from the start, so I never had to deal with him. But yeah, hearing the horror stories, knowing that he LL'd in 6 months, like, there was no one had time to fall in love with this hero because he was just gone.
I didn't realize he was still kind of around close to the start of Uprising. That's actually when I started playing as well, and I just remember Ryan really liked Chain, and then I knew Chain LL'd. That was all I knew. And I knew, and Prism LL'd, and I was like, oh, like, that's a big deal. People love Prism, like, I know that much, but no one really talked about Starvo that much after he LL'd, I feel like.
No, because he was
just be a forgotten memory.
He was in and out. People didn't want to think about him anymore. But speaking of Team Ascent, I do want to know more about kind of how you prepped for Worlds. I mean, you tested a few heroes. You had said that you had tried Aurora and tried a few different builds, but, like, what was your overall testing process?
Yeah, so I would say that, like, Team Ascent is really small. We've got under 15 players, and I'd say we've got maybe 10 or 11 active players. And so when it comes to our testing, I think a lot of it depends on, like, who is playing at any given tournament. And we didn't have as coordinated of a testing effort this time around. Like, we were very, very coordinated going into PTLA, but I think a lot of us just had, like, other life stuff happening to go on, like, and so and there weren't as many of us going to Japan because it's very expensive. I think there were 5 of us altogether, 5. So to be honest, like, I didn't do a lot of testing. Like I said, I kind of said like 2 weeks before Worlds, like, Brian, what do I play?
Yeah.
And then I kind of went from there. I hadn't really been going to armories as much, and when we did, it was mostly like draft or just non-CC formats. So I didn't test that much. I will say that typically, that's not typical. We do tend to like narrow down on the meta in the month or two before a big event. We usually create a spreadsheet. We write down, every hero we expect to be competitive, what we expect their meta share to be, what we expect their win rate to be into every other hero, and then we just have a calculator that figures out like, okay, given all the matchups and the amount of each hero that we expect, like, what is the expected win rate of every hero? And that's been really, really helpful in the past for kind of just more like objectively, obviously it's still subjective because it's our judgments on the heroes and our guesstimates. But it helps get a view of like, okay, I love this hero, but that 47% expected win rate isn't looking so hot compared to like Levi's like unexpected 53% win rate into the field right now, right? And so that kind of helps us make our deck choices usually. This time, since we like didn't really have as much time to do that together as a team, I kind of just tried to do that in my head a little bit, talk it through with Brian, talk it through with some other teams as well, like the Shoot Waffles, and I kind of heard whispers that like Ellie thought Aurora was like best deck in format by far, and like I was like, okay, like let's try this out, like this looks interesting, because locally we were pretty devoid of Auroras, at our ProQuest. There were like a few, but they weren't really putting up results, so I think people in our area just kind of like weren't thinking about her, and no one else on Ascent ended up playing Aurora, so I didn't really have as much like there wasn't as much to bounce off of, like I could have tried to evaluate her matchups, and like Mara Ferris is obviously like a huge Dio expert, so like when it came to the Dio matchup, like she's who I would, go to in the Dio chat and like read through everything she's been saying and like, okay, where are people at? Like I know she's got a Patreon, people are gonna be reading it, people are gonna be like looking at her build, and that was super, super helpful. She also gave me a ton of like last minute advice before my match with Sam, and like really, really helpful stuff. So like I'd say that this season Ascent just for various reasons happened to be a lot more like winging it than usual. But it like worked out quite well for us. Another teammate, Diggin White, also did very well at Worlds. I think he topped 32'd. I think he got like 17th or 19th, something like that. So he did very well. He was on Viscerai. And another teammate, Chris Brummett, was on new. Mobox was also on new, and then Brian was on Enigma. So like we aren't really the type of team that like aligns our deck choices together. Like we all kind of play what we want to play, and then we help each other, hone in our gameplay, hone in our game plans against other heroes. So I also got a lot of like in the moment help from Team Ascent, even the people that weren't there. Like, and when you were piloting Aurora, trying to like help on the morning of top 8, like Easton was piloting the CYB new and like just trying to like play that out from Michael's side, and like Rhea was helping, and she was also playing CYB new, and like Levi was watching the games and like evaluating, and so it was really, really great to have that kind of support like going on, literally the morning of top 8 while I was like trying to cram for these matchups that I haven't practiced like desperately. But sorry to disappoint with the pre-Worlds testing, but
no, I mean that honestly, that it's sort of nice to hear. Not that hey, you're guaranteed to do really well if you just practice. You can just wing it. But it is really nice because, a lot of people have life stuff going on. I have life stuff going on. I don't get to play as much as I'd like. So it is nice to hear, like, all right, well, if you've got the fundamentals, if you have people who can help you out, then you don't need to grind for hours and hours every day. You can just go in with a deck and some luck and some fundamentals and skill and do well.
I mean, it was quite unexpected. The morning before, or the night before Worlds rather, I was in the hotel room with Brian. I was just feeling really shitty, and I was like, Brian, like I can't believe I cashed in my only PTI for an event that I barely practiced for. Like, I can't believe I didn't prepare for this. Like, I'm so disappointed in myself. And he was like, you're gonna do great. Like, don't worry about it. Like, it's gonna be okay. Like, you didn't make a mistake. Like, it's fine. I just, like, didn't believe him, right? Like, when you're in that headspace, it's really hard to, like, pull your, you know, for someone else to pull you out. Like, you kind of pull yourself out. And, you know, eventually I did sort of, you know, go into day one with this attitude of, like, you know what, like, I am super capable, like, I am at Worlds, I'm gonna do great, like, yeah, I didn't prepare as much as I would have wanted to, but that, like, but I have the time to think through my lines because I'm playing an aggro deck, and it's gonna be fine, like, no matter what. And just kind of, like, giving myself that grace, I think really helped my mindset, because I really believe in, like, you have to have a winner's mindset to do well. Like, if you think you're losing, I think your, like, fate is almost always already sealed. Yeah. So I always try to maintain the mindset of, like, I can win this, and, like, which is why I think also in, like, the finals game, you know, the game was over like 20 or 30 minutes before it actually ended. But when I was sitting there, I didn't feel that way. I definitely felt like, I can win this. I can win this. And it's one of those things where it's not like I'm not trying to be unrealistic, but you have to keep telling yourself that. Or you're not gonna, like, your brain is not going to want to use its limited resources to find the right place, right? Like, it's definitely, I think, important to have the right mentality, even if you don't, you know, prepare as much as you wanted to.
No, of course. Well, like you said, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you sit down and think, well, I'm going to lose this game, then you're not gonna play to your outs. You're not gonna see the outs that you have. And in your finals game, thinking, well, the game, you know, the game might have ended 30 minutes ago. But that's also assuming that your opponent plays perfectly. And sometimes your out is your opponent screws up, and sometimes your opponent does screw up. If you're sitting there, it's been 2.5 days, you're exhausted, but so are they. And you've got the benefit of playing the aggro deck. They're playing the fatigue deck that they have to think through how to play all the lines. And sometimes they might just screw up. Yeah,
it's definitely something, like, I always try to play towards my outs. You know, I also think it was kind of weird because, you know, I went into day one, I immediately lost round one to a dash IE. Where, you know, I was like, oh, dash IE, like, I don't have a written sideboard for this. Like, and then I was like, okay, you know, they're probably on slapdash. Like, that's been floating around in my PCYB dash. So I board it as if it's, you know, fatigue CYB, and then they were not. They were just regular boost dash. And I lost by literally 2 health when, you know, if I'd had a dyadic carapace instead of tunic, like, I win that game, and you know, that was a little bit frustrating, but I just had to keep telling myself, like, I did the best I could with the information I had. I didn't know what build he was going to be on, and that is genuinely tricky. So I lost round one, and I was like, okay, well, that's fine. Like, I didn't need to win. Like, it's fine. I don't need to win this. I'm just gonna practice and, like, take it as, like, the high quality practice that it is. And then I just didn't lose that day again. And I was like, okay, like, what's happening here? Then day 2, I lost round 1. I was like, oh, okay, this is fine. Like, I didn't need to, like, top 8. It's fine. I'll just, you know, I'll be happy if I cash at this point. And then I didn't lose. And I was just like, like, what's happening here?
Maybe this is going really well.
Yeah, I was like, this is working out. Like, why aren't these games? Yeah, I don't know. I had some really, really close and tight games, but I don't know. It just, like, I expected it to be. I hate to say this because it sounds really, like, arrogant, but, like, it didn't feel that hard. And maybe that's just because, like, the deck is really, like, once you learn it, it's very, like, you see the lines, right? Like, it's not as straightforward as a deck like Phi was, and even Phi has its nuances, right? Like, people always joke about it being the brain dead aggro, but I really disagree with that. And anyway, so it was one of those things where I was just like, I made it to the end of day 2, and I was just like, wait, what? Like, what just happened? And I was, like, ecstatic, but, like, it was just the whole, I literally thought I was dreaming multiple times during the day. I was like, I think I'm actually in a dream right now, and I was, like, trying to wake myself up, and Yeah, I don't remember the question you asked, but it was a surreal experience.
I don't remember the question I asked either. I did want to share one anecdote before I forget. Testing with Easton. So you invite me to the Ascent Discord. I jump into a lobby with Easton, and he says, "Okay, so I'm going to play CYB new, and you'll play Aurora, and here's what Mercy told me to tell you to test, and how we're going to change up the sideboard. Oh, and one more thing, who are you?" And of course, I have Lupine Fiasco in Discord, and I'm just thinking like, buddy, if you don't know who Lupine Fiasco is, you are not going to know who John Cooper is. Like, I'm a NorCal local. Mercy knows me. Which I take that with me now. Every once in a while, it is always nice to know, like, oh no, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
It keeps
wouldn't
me
take
humble.
it personally.
No.
Easton can't even remember the names of the cards in his own deck, so like asking him to remember Fab players is too much.
Easton and James Silver, I've had experiences with both of them where I'm like, just keeping me humble. Do not know who I am.
I'll always know who you are, John.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That does a great segue into people. You had talked about how people don't necessarily know who you are. Well, they clearly do now. So what has been the response to being second place in Worlds? You're the top of the ELO leaderboard. Like, how is that? For now. But you have a commanding lead. You aren't. It isn't like Pablo, who is just tied. Like, you are far ahead.
Oh yeah, if you're tied, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's been honestly a really amazing response. I think like the thing that really touched me was like the day of top 8. My match was last, and they were like, okay, expect the matches to be like 30 minutes apiece, and just check in, and then like 3 hours goes by because we've got multiple CYB games. So I'm just like banging my head against a wall, metaphorically, of course, please don't do that. Like testing Enigma with Brian. Brian keeps beating me on that Enigma deck, by the way. Like, I went into that matchup thinking, God, I'm gonna lose this because he was just beating me over and over and over. There were times that I would just like, step aside, take a break. And like, the thing I noticed was like, I had so many women come up to me and just to wish me like good luck and like just say how excited they were and that like, wishing me to kick butt, just like complimenting my dress or whatever. And I was just like, to be honest, like I didn't even know that many women were in the convention center. It was like really, really nice to like kind of meet so many of them, and that like maybe I'd seen their Twitter handles or whatever, but I'd never had an occasion to actually talk with them, and like and then I had friends back home telling me that like people who play Fab but their partner doesn't or whatever, and one of my friends told me like, oh, my wife and her cousin stayed up all night watching your matches because they were so excited. That's and it was so funny because they had no idea what was going on. And it was like, it's just, I don't know, it's really inspiring to like be in that position where you feel like, because there is something like extra about like being a woman in top 8. Like obviously Yuki made it last year, and Yuki's always been the GOAT and amazing and super inspiring. But it's one of those things where I think that like when you're already kind of marginalized in a space, it's really nice to see someone like you succeed. And if you go a while without seeing that, it can be very discouraging. Or even if it's just like, okay, maybe only one person succeeds in this way, or maybe only 2 people, and they're like special, they're like above the rest, right? Like, but someone like me couldn't do it, or whatever. And I think for a long time, that's kind of like the internal mindset that I had, and it's not a healthy mindset to have, and it's one of those things where it's like the more people that you see, like, who look like you, competing in a space and doing all this space, like, the easier it gets to tell yourself the opposite, right? To tell yourself that, no, like, I can do this, like, other people did it too. And so that was just like something that I felt really, really privileged to like be in that position of like, I'm now the person that like I wanted to look up to, or like that I wanted as an example to show that I could do it, and like, again, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn here, but I think it's just like, it's something that like many of the women in Fab can do, and it's just, and I happen to be the one that was in that position this time. And I really hope it like leads to more participation from women in the future as well. Like, I don't know, it's just so funny hearing about not even just the friend and his wife and her cousin, but like also just other friends who had like female relatives or friends who are also watching and like don't really know anything about the game. And like my sister like came over to like hang out with my mom and watch the games, and they don't know anything about Flesh and Blood. Like they've never watched a game in their life. And my mom was like, oh no, we went back through like the VODs and we like watched everything so that we like understood all your opponents. And I was like, it was just like crazy to me. It was really, really just inspiring, and I felt so lucky to have that kind of support around me and the excitement around me.
No, that's great, and that's very cool. I don't think it's tooting your own horn at all. I mean, representation is important. It is something that I and people who look like me don't necessarily understand, or at least we conceive of it, but we cannot relate to it. And so no, it is supremely cool that you did as well as you did, and that other women are taking inspiration from it, that they're noticing, that they're like so excited for you, because it's extremely exciting. Like, it's so cool.
Yeah, thank you. It definitely has been a ride. I feel like I do now have set a standard for myself though that will be very, very difficult to live up to in the future. But we'll see. I'm going to Calling Portland. I pulled the trigger today after seeing the bands.
Oh, that's so cool. I'll see you there.
Yeah, I'm ready to rip that Elo band-aid off too. Like, it's just, there's no way to maintain that Elo. There isn't. Even if I do really well, there's just it's gonna drop.
Never lose anything ever again.
I mean, hey, even if I were going to Calling Portland, I'm going to Calling Chicago, and that is LL. And you know that thing about not coming in, or not playing when Starvo was legal.
Oh yeah.
Very, very scary to encounter him for the first time in LL.
And he's powered up again. He's got Starstruck back.
Oh God. Oh, I think it's gonna be terrifying. I didn't even think about it today that he also gets to run electromagnetic somersault. Gross.
He gets somersault. He gets the Jarl stuff. I mean, he doesn't get the new Earth Ice fuse. But
thank God.
He's gonna have something. He's got something.
I don't know. Maybe I'll have to try Starvo. I do like my lightning heroes, but yeah. Anyway, it's going one way or another. Also, I understand now why after Issa made top 4 worlds last year, and I think he ended up close to the top video, if not the very top. And it was at that point where he was like, "Elo means nothing," and I was like, "Yeah, okay, you're just saying that because you're at the top." I understand now. It just means nothing, and at least until it's better balanced, it just reflects like the last event mostly. Like,
I see a lot of discourse about that online, and it like, I feel bad saying it, because whoever's at the top of the leaderboard, especially if they're a new person, like they have not been in top 50 before, like, well, I don't want to take away from your achievement, I don't want to denigrate your performance, but like, yeah, there is an element of that. So
I mean, I earned 370 Elo from Worlds. Like, I don't. I've played, a bunch of rated events, and my Elo's gone up and down and up and down. But it's just crazy that one event shifts so much. Like, it just feels a little off. Like, I think it needs some. Maybe once there's been more events, LSS will change the calculations, but I feel like it should reflect long term more than it does the immediate short term. And yeah, again, I also don't want to denigrate anyone at the top of the Elo leaderboard, but like, when you're at the top and you're suddenly looking at that and you're like, I know for a fact that there are like hundreds of Fab players who are as good as or better than me. Like, you can't look at that and be like, hell yeah, I'm the best player in the world. You can be like, hell yeah, I'm the best player in the world this week. Like, or maybe, like, well, I'm among the top, I'll accept that, but like, it's just ridiculous when you look at it as a whole.
Well, that's what the World Tour is supposed to be, I think. And maybe it might just be an annual thing, because I do want to say it resets at the start of each year, but at least...
The leaderboard?
No, the World Tour, their thing with the, like, it's points based on, so I think it resets, so yeah, there's at least that for, like, hey, you top 8 at a bunch of callings, and now you're number 5 on the leaderboard, and someone else spiked a nationals, and they're only top 15 or whatever.
Yeah, I'm very curious if they're going to use that beyond just the, like, prizes that they're giving out. You know, if they're going to use it for qualifications in the future, then I think it, you know, is going to matter a lot more. But yeah, it is just, it's silly sometimes when it's like, you can kind of, you know, I could not play another competitive event until London.
Yeah.
And theoretically get my invite to London that way. I don't need to do that. I already have an invite, but I could.
Yeah.
You know, our friend Tao Tao, unfortunately, had to take a year-long break from FAB. He stayed in the top 50 global ELO that entire time. Like, it's a little silly when someone can, like, not play FAB for a year and stay in the top 50.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You mentioned the bans, and you mentioned Portland. Yeah. So how do you feel about the CC meta going into Portland now?
Yeah, I'm excited. Part of the reason I decided to go, you know, I kind of decided if they ban, you know, Count Your Blessings or nerf it, and if they ban High Octane, I think Aurora's in a really, really good spot. I think Viscerai's in a really good spot too, but I think Aurora's matchup into Viscerai is just fine.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's kind of surprising. I think people still aren't settled on an Aurora deck. Like, I don't think there is one definitive best Aurora deck. I mean, maybe there is, but I don't think people have decided that yet. So I think there's still quite a few builds running around that I personally think are worse for the mirror.
Yeah.
And maybe worse in general. And so I think it's going to be a really good Aurora meta, very good for Viscerai. I don't think Dio's dead. But she's definitely not going, like, you can slow down the game a little bit more now, which gives Aurora more control over the matchup. I think Zen is still going to be a strong deck, and you know, Zen still have a lot going for them in terms of being good to the replays and whatnot. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really exciting meta. I'm honestly really happy to see Storm go, and not just because we lost to it on a world stage, and had people complaining about how long it took to close the game out. Sorry, people. Been up since 4 a.m.
Don't apologize to them. Don't apologize. They don't deserve
it. You know, I say I'm sorry not because I'm actually sorry. I say I'm sorry because I'm sorry you had to sit through it, because I would hate sitting through that as a player. You know, I empathize with you. I'm not sorry that I did it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very excited. 50th calling is going to be super, super cool. I'm hoping I can kind of, you know, run it back, do well again. But yeah, I'm very excited for calling Portland. It's going to be a good time. You're going too, right?
Yes.
Yes. So
I'm going. My girlfriend is coming with me, and so she has people that she knows in Portland, so she's going to come with Friday morning, meet everybody. So. The Lightning Press event starts on Friday, and she's gonna go away and not hang out because she does not care about this card game, which I don't hold it against her. When we started dating, I was playing Magic, and she said, I will not play Magic with you. And I said, that's totally fine. All I need from you is if I come home at the end of a Friday night and say I 3-0'd, I want you to at least pretend to be excited for me. She said, I can do that.
Yeah, that's actually really funny because I had a similar start with Brian in Flesh and Blood. We were already dating, and he was like, I kind of want to get into a new card game, like Legends of Runeterra isn't hitting the same anymore. And I was like, yeah, and I also played Runeterra, so I understood. But I was like, no way am I ever going to get into a cardboard game. I'm not spending a bunch of money on cardboard. Like, I'd heard all the Magic horror stories, like I was not, you know, that's what I was thinking about. I was like, this is going to be like Magic. And I was like, okay, well, you do what you want, but I'm never doing that. And, you know, he was like kind of upset with me for how aggressively against it I was for myself. But he eventually, you know, we were on winter break, and he's like, hey, you want to, like, let's just play some, like, for fun, like, Blitz games. You know, I'll show you, like, Lexi and Oldham. And I was like, okay, fine. And then I played it, and I was like, okay, can we play again? Can we play again? Can we play again?
That's fine.
And then I was hooked. And, it's one of those things where, I don't begrudge women in the slightest for not wanting to play the game. Because it is a lot. It's a lot to deal with, and there's a lot of pressure to perform, I think, too, if you're committed to playing it at a competitive level. Okay, I have a lot of friends that I'm working on that I've been wanting to get into the game. Sarah, please play Flesh and Blood with me. I swear to God. And one day it'll come around. I believe.
Well, the game only gets better and better. I mean, especially comparing it to the competition, the game only gets better.
Yes.
There are only more reasons to play Flesh and Blood, more reasons to stop playing other games and come play Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, I just think if you stick to a local level, if you don't travel for events, you never. There's a good chance you won't ever deal with any toxicity either. Mm-hmm. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If your local meta is good, if your local players are nice.
Yeah, and then
which are
your mileage may vary.
Your mileage may vary, but on the whole, I think Flesh and Blood has a great supportive community.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
Even if people, put their foot in their mouth sometimes, no one, you can talk to them about it, and that's ultimately the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to other Flesh and Blood players who maybe either want to advance from the local level and compete on a larger stage, or feel like they've stagnated or hit a wall? I mean, is there anything that you can... We've talked about it a lot as far as things that you've done and how you've progressed, and you've tried other heroes, so now you have more of a handle on, if you do play an aggro deck into a mid-range deck, what are they trying to do to you and how can you fight against it? Mm-hmm. But do you have any more generalized advice, or maybe anything more specific in that regard that you would offer to people?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that, as corny as it is, ultimately, the most important thing is just to put in consistent practice. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that beats experience and reps in terms of just when you sit down across from your opponent, even if you're on a new deck, you have comfort in the fact that you know how this game works, you know how interactions work, you aren't going to be surprised by some card you didn't know existed. I think it's very important to know what the field looks like and what the cards you could see are, because otherwise you're kind of flying blind and you can only really focus on your game plan, and there is a lot of merit to that. I did that with 5 when I was first starting the game, just focus on my game plan, I don't have to interact so much with my opponents. Mm-hmm. But once you do, want to be competing at a high level, you have to be able to switch decks according to what the meta demands, and you have to understand what the meta is doing, and that just comes with time and experience, and surrounding yourself with people that have also put in that time and have that experience. And it's very valuable when people bring perspectives from other card games as well, right? The only card game I played before this was Legends of Runeterra, and that's digital, and it's not really the same type of game at all. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn a lot of things that I really couldn't wrap my head around in the beginning, fatigue and value and tempo, and I still don't pretend that I perfectly understand what those concepts are. I don't think everyone agrees on what those mean. Yeah. And how you get value out of any given card. I think it can sometimes be up to interpretation. But once you stuck with it long enough, it sort of starts to digest and get locked into your brain. So there's that. I think, as I said, surrounding yourself with other great players and great minds is very, very, very important for covering your own gaps. I am not a deck builder for the most part. I think I do have an eye for which cards are good and which cards are bad for the most part. Mm-hmm. But I can't really start from scratch and build the best deck. Not some other people have worked at getting good at and maybe have some natural talent for as well, like Ellie Bird. She can just sit down with the hero and kind of construct this is the deck. Yeah, she's a fantastic. Fish a few hands, adjust and get there. Yeah. So I'd say like you don't have to be strong in every aspect of the game. Like I don't think people, like you don't have to be a strong deck builder. You don't even necessarily have to be a strong pilot if you are thinking really deeply about like the game and matchups. Like you can kind of shore up your own weaknesses. That's basically what I'm trying to say. And even if you decide that like I can't pilot this, like I'm not going to do well in a competition, like there are so many other ways to engage with Flesh and Blood in a competitive way if that's your thing. And and you don't even have to play. Like you can be the person helping other people succeed. You can be the amazing deck builder. You can be the caster. You can be the content creator. Like there are a lot of ways to be competitive, I think, at Fab that don't even necessitate winning events. Yeah. And I'm not sure that that's like a popular opinion. I think a lot of people start feeling down on themselves when they don't have results. But I think like as long as you can keep finding ways to engage with the game, you can keep yourself in a good mental space. And if winning is what you want to do eventually, like that will help you get there because you will stay engaged. Your brain will keep working at these things even in the background when you're not like actively thinking about it. Your brain is sort of mulling over these things, and I think eventually things just sort of start to click. I know it's not super specific advice, which is what you asked for, but I really think it is just like time spent playing and thinking critically about what you're doing. Like I don't think it's purely time. Like you can't just grind a bunch of Talishar games and be like, okay, I'm good at this game now. Like if those Talishar games are not like quality games and you're not stopping to think about your plays because the other person is yelling at you to take a game action, then like you're not going to have time to really assess where you went wrong and what you need to do differently in the next game. Like it's kind of a similar tenet to language learning, which was something that was drilled into me when I was learning a new language. Is like you can practice all you want, but you're not actually going to get better at the language until you start keeping track of your mistakes and keeping track of your most common pitfalls, because that's really the only way to like avoid them. So I think just like analyzing your own gameplay, talking about it with other people, having people watch you play, all very important, at least for me.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I really like your point about engaging with the game in other ways, that you don't have to be a tournament winning player. You can just do other things and be very successful in that. Mansant is the best Levia player, but we'll never see a result from him because he's too busy succeeding at being a caster, streamer, producer, content creator.
Yeah, it's true. And it's one of those things where it's just like, if you do feel like you're hitting that wall, like it's okay to take a break. Like you don't have to engage with Flesh and Blood all the time. Like I certainly cannot do that. I'm planning to take a at least a 2-month break basically. Over winter time. Like I mean I can't deny that like getting second at Worlds made me much more excited about the game and made me much more excited to engage. But at the same time, like there are so many other things outside of Flesh and Blood to engage with. That's and true. Like sometimes just taking a break and coming back to it with like a fresh set of eyes, not having read all the like terrible takes on Purple Discord and not having like over analyzed every matchup to the nth degree to where the point where like your lists are so inbred that like you're never gonna need the tech that you bought. It's very important, I think, to take a step back as well and let your brain rest. Like, don't feel like you're stagnating. Don't worry. Your brain's going to be working on it in the background. You're still going to be processing everything you were learning before you took a break. And when you come back, like, things are going to be stronger.
Do you ever see a future in content creation for you?
No.
No, why not? No, you're just, really? That's surprising.
I'm a little bit ashamed to admit this, since I know this is going to go up on YouTube, but I don't engage with Flesh and Blood content, basically ever. I don't.
If there is anything that qualifies you to make Flesh and Blood content, it's the fact that you don't engage with it, because I have yet to speak to someone who makes Flesh and Blood content that actually watches other people's stuff. I'm sure they exist, but anytime I talk to, I talk to Majin Bay, I talk to other people who I know make content, they're like, I don't have time for it.
You're all too busy. You don't have time to watch other people's content.
No.
You gotta stay in your own lane. Plus, if you watch other people's content, you're gonna start subconsciously copying them.
Exactly.
It's gonna be a problem.
So no, if anything, that's a qualification.
I sincerely doubt it. Mainly because I think I would run out of things to say quickly, and I don't like video editing.
That's fair.
I shouldn't say never. Never say never, But I don't think so. At least not unless I really feel like I have something to say that nobody else is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really feel like, I don't know. Anyone can start a podcast, but are the things you're saying interesting and unique? Not necessarily, right? I find I shouldn't say I never engage with content. There is content that I engage with, and I think the content that is the most interesting to me is specialist content like yours, where it's for a long time you specialized in Fi. You taught people how to play Fi. You became the Fi guy, right? That makes your content easy to digest, and you know where to go when you need help with a certain thing, right? But as far as just come listen to my friends and I shoot the shit, I already have to deal with that at tournaments enough. I don't need to hear it again on YouTube.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, that's fair.
So yeah, I think unique perspectives are important, and I'm not gonna say I don't have a unique perspective on the game, but I would have to be convinced that what I have to say is sufficiently interesting to enough people that I should put in the effort. And there are also other ways to create content. I might write some articles or something at some point, but I do not like video formats.
All right, well, if you're watching this at home and you want to hear more content from Mercy, you want her to make videos, then, that's the feedback.
That is not bait. I'm not fishing for people to tell me that. Honestly, stay quiet if you do, because I don't need one more thing on my plate, but, maybe it'll come naturally in due time, but I kind of doubt it.
Well, it has been fantastic talking to you. This has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed hearing about your experiences, and I appreciate you taking the time. It was great to get to talk to you. It's great for you to share your insights. And I'm looking forward to the next time we talk in person. And when calling Portland, then if you want to come back on the channel, you're welcome to.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. But if I don't win, I'm not ever.
We only invite people. You have to improve on your performance. So you've come in second. There's only one way to go up from here.
Okay. Yeah. Understandable.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will see all of you later.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.